Hi guys, Charlie Black 20 back again. It's been a while since I made my last video. Things have been pretty hectic, and I've also been putting it off because I wanted to have my thoughts straight. I've decided I'm probably going to make this into a couple of videos, but I'm going to be doing a comparison of the two Lion King movies. The 1994 animated Americanized version and the 2019 Africanized Lion King live action. And that actually is going to be one of my topics of comparison. But the first comparison is obviously going to be a little financial. The animated version, again made in 1994, cost $45 million in budget, but grossed in profits $968.5 million. Almost $1 billion, and still remains the highest grossing animated Disney film of all time. The live action Lion King was made in 2019. Its budget was $250 to $260 million and made $1.657 billion. Larger budget, larger return, pretty good. Now, I'm going to do a couple points of comparison about what I think is very different between both versions, and I'm also going to point out a couple of good things from both movies and a couple of bad things based on how the movies are portrayed, as well as some controversies that the movies portray. Now, between the two movies, I think that the original movie, the animated one, focuses way more on the music than it does the story itself, although the story is still part of the whole movie. The second movie, 2019 live action version, focuses more on the story versus the music. I think we can agree as a general principle that the music is beautiful in both versions. Absolutely just beautiful. Despite its differences, whatever they may be, they all have their... the animated version always lives in the hearts of those who saw it as kids, and I am one of those. So I will always love the original versions in a way that I don't love the new ones, although I still think the new ones have their own charm to them. Now, I think one of the main things that's very different between the two is that the animated version is more Americanized, meaning that we took a story like Hamlet, these Shakespearean stories about a great king, a jealous brother, and a young prince, and we took the story and made it into it's very Americanized in the way that it is portrayed. That there's this no-nonsense king, but loves his child very much. A conniving brother who feels that he has been duped out of his rightful place in the world as king. And then you have the young prince who wants to be like his father, but has a love for adventure and a disdain for danger. It sounds like a very Americanized thing to do. And the new one, the 2009 version, focuses more on the story, as I said again, which is more in line today with the way that we view the world today as people who watched the movie before and people who are now seeing it again, or even the new generation of kids seeing it for the first time in live action before the animated version. And so, sorry, been a long day, but you could say it's more Africa-centric because we have a lot more different voices that are definitely not quote-unquote American voices. Basically, it's it's a more diverse cast than it was in the original. Which, for voiceover, you might think, well, what's the big deal? Well, all voices are different. It's just that some have different connotations, different dialects, different languages, different accents, and different ways of rolling their letters. So, sorry. So, I think the animated version is more quote-unquote Americanized versus the new one, which is more more for the entire world. It has a more global implication than the original one does. Like they knew that, I think people understood that this new movie, this new version, was going to have to appeal to a much wider audience base. So it was less American-centric in that sense. Now, I mentioned that the music over the story was there. And that's one of my biggest peeves with the new one, with the 2019 version versus the animated version. That, yes, I love the story. They do a great job. If you're looking for story over music, go to the newest one. If you're looking for music and nostalgia, go to the animated one. Now, for example, the best song to so many of the people who watch the originals was Be Prepared, which was Scar's song in the original, sung by both Jeremy Irons and Jim Cummings. Now, there were some controversies because of that song and the visuals that accompanied it, but the fact of the matter is that that song lasts 3.5 minutes in the original movie, and it's got way more implications, and it's got it's just got a much larger feel to it. Whereas the new one, it lasts maybe a minute and a half. And it's not so much a song as it is a proclamation. It just has some music along with it. And that's one of my biggest gripes with the movie, the new one. I understand maybe why they went that way. They didn't want to have this controversy that the original one seems to have, which I'm like, just look at the context they're trying to make it in, the 1990s versus 2019. And then people say the new movie was a cash grab. I say all movies are cash grabs. It's just how much more are you trying to grab? But it still did very well. Again, I think it's a good movie to show, especially for the new generation. Like, again, I'm a little more old school. I mean, I'm an old man at this point compared to some of these youngsters. God, it feels so weird being able to say that, but it's true. So the original one became a classic. The new one was trying to move forward, but also grab cash. There's no doubt about that. It was a cash grab, but I think that the people who made it really wanted to do a good job, and they really meant to do very, very well with it. And I think they did a good job with the story, and they improved it in ways that you wouldn't expect, or it's the little things that you don't see, or that you can't see unless you're really looking for them. But I think they did a good job doing the story versus the music. That was the compromise, basically. Although, again, the music is still good in the way that it's done. And there are two other things that I saw in the movie, the new one, that I gripe against, that the animated one did better. Obviously, I already did the Be Prepared song. That was better in the animated version. But the second thing that just kind of grossed me out was how Rafiki, the baboon, found out that Simba was alive, and it's because he got some of his fur, but the way the fur came to him was through a dung beetle, through dung, which is basically Africa poop, and that's just gross. That just, to me, was, I understand why they went that way, but it was just ugh, gross, disgusting. Like, we really didn't need to see that. And then, my biggest gripe with the new movie. Anybody who watched the animated version knows the scene where Mufasa is trying to get up the cliff and Scar throws him off and he's falling. We hear him scream. The darkness falls through. And Simba goes to find his father. In the new movie, Simba is thrown. We don't see him falling in the same way. It's a different style. And the sun is totally bright. There is light everywhere. There's no darkness. That is a cinematic mistake. You lose a lot of the power of that moment because there's so much light around Mufasa and no darkness around this scene. So that to me is a big mistake. Big mistake. So the feeling that those watching as children or adults seeing that scene again, the feeling isn't there. At least not for me, and I'm sure for not a lot of other people. And I've had a few discussions with some of my friends. They point to different things like the Be Prepared song wasn't good enough, all these things. And I agree with them on that, but the one thing that they have to change if they ever go back to, that they should have kept, was Mufasa's death scene needed to be as dark as possible. Cinematic-wise, line-wise, which they did good with, but also just how they moved the lighting. Like, the lighting completely killed the scene for me. It's still epic, but nowhere near the, like, getting stabbed in the heart. So those are my biggest things about it. Now, I will say the new movie does improve on some things. Like, I always thought that the hyenas from the original one, they weren't that dangerous. They were kind of stupid. You didn't have to fear them that much unless you were, a small little cub. The new movie improves on that by showing, no, these hyenas are pretty dangerous. Yeah, they're a little stupid. They have their own ways of doing things, but they're not completely without any intelligence. They have an actual queen instead of just being like this tiny group of, like, infighting idiots. And they understand that Mufasa is powerful in his own way, but that they are expecting to... it's hard to explain that one, but basically, the hyenas are portrayed as very dangerous in this new movie. And they are not there for laughs, although we do get some laughs out of them, but they're basically a very dangerous foe, even for lions. Which makes a lot of sense, because a lot of people don't know that hyenas actually have the strongest jaw strength of any animal in the world. So they're pretty dangerous. And we see they improve on how Scar interacts with both Mufasa, somewhat with Simba, and especially with how he just keeps lying and lying and lying and lying. And people, when Sarabi, the queen, rejects him, it's a powerful moment for her and the other lionesses, because she's saying, I'm not gonna, I don't respect you. I don't like that you're our king. I just have to accept that you're our king. Doesn't mean I have to like it. And then Scar punishes her by basically saying the lions will eat last, meaning the hyenas, who he's brought in as his allies, as his police force, you could say, are eating everything they can, destroying the Pride Lands, just like in the original. Whew. So, I think they improved on Scar's character in that sense, and how he interacts with everybody around him. especially Simba, how he manipulates him. Like, it's not so obvious to, like, it's obvious to the audience that he's not happy. It's not obvious to Simba that he's completely not liking what's going on. Like, he's very good at tricking Simba in this sense, rather than Simba just being a little naive and stupid, like in the animated version. I think Simba's portrayed more as naive in the beginning than he is, just kind of reckless, even though he does have a sense of adventure. And then we've got Nala's character. I think they improved on her character a bit by making her far more independent-minded. Like, she's going against what her queen wants to do, which is that she believes they need to fight back against Scar, or at the very least they need to escape. And Sarabi says we can't abandon our home, and we have to accept that Scar's king. Which you could say, I say, very generational change right there. That Nala, she's not grown up with a great king, so she's like, why shouldn't we get rid of this king? And she doesn't have, like, she wasn't around Mufasa that much, so she doesn't have anything to compare it to, so of course she wants to leave it. And then, we've got Timon and Pumbaa. They, to me, they are good in both movies. I love that they come up with the idea of the line being in the movie, that the story of life is a line, like that it's not a circle, it's just a straight line, like there's just don't need to worry about anything, don't need to care about anything, just enjoy yourself while you can. And Simba tries to live that life like he does in the original, but he finds that he can't in the end, because when Nala finds him, she's reminding him of his duties, his responsibilities that he's supposed to care about. But Simba's so afraid of the truth coming out, at least what he thinks is the truth, and making him hate it, making people hate him. And it's the one thing that Simba absolutely cannot stand, is disappointing others. We see that when he is confronted by Mufasa for going into the hyena's den and disobeying him. Like, Simba is more afraid of disappointing his father and his mother and his friends than he is in actually consequences to himself. The disappointment and fear of rejection really gets to Simba. And you can see that way more in the new movie than in the old one. In the old one, it's grief and confusion more than anything else that drives Simba to run. In this movie, it seems more like Simba's just afraid to face up to what he feels he's done, and the disappointment that, and maybe the fear, anger, rejection that could come from his mother and friends. And so, I'm going to move on now to what are the quote-unquote controversies of these movies. The 2019 one, I don't think there's too many controversies other than it being a cash grab, and it trying to be, as we would say, as some people will say, critics, and I think some with justification, most without, that it's trying to be a politically correct movie by not portraying things the way that the animated one did. Now, I can see both sides to a certain degree. I think that both movies are made in two different eras. One is 25 years old by the time they made it. The animated movie is 25 years old by the time they make the new one. So a whole generation has passed. Things that were quote-unquote acceptable in those past 25 years are no longer acceptable. Okay, fine, whatever. But the animated version, the thing that a lot of people had a big problem with was the hyenas during the Be Prepared song, where they're marching in these lines, and it gives off a very evil vibe. Now, I look at that today, and I think, oh, that's what the Nazis used to do. They're goose-stepping. It's the old adage of the Nazis marching to battle, to glory, to evil. Whereas other people at the time has said, and in past years when it came out, said that it was portraying them as a class conflict and a racial conflict, that this was looking down on people of different ethnicities. And to that I say this, growing up with that as a kid, you didn't look at the hyenas and see a different race. You saw hyenas. And you saw somebody else leading them to do something horrible. And then growing up, when I started learning more about history, I saw them as, oh, it's the Nazis marching. That's why they had a problem with it. No. Some people were saying that it was a comparison to illegal immigration and opening the floodgates to the hyenas. And I'm like, Scar brought them in to perform a coup. You could put that more into the medieval times than you could into today's modern politics. Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. It's based off a Shakespearean play. Shakespeare is from the Renaissance, and he wrote stories based on a lot of medieval stuff. So it doesn't quite fit there. And then another controversy, which I don't think really matters, is that at one point in the animated movie, Simba falls into this clump of bushes, and the flowers and pollen and buds burst into the air, and they form a cloud of dust that flies to Rafiki. But in the movie, apparently it spells something, and it's a homage to the people who made who were the technicians who did a lot of the cinematic work for the animated movie. I forget what they're called, technicians or something. And apparently they spelled it SFX, which is a synonym for their department. Like I think it's, I forget what it is, but basically SFX. And apparently a few conservative radio hosts or politicians or talkers, whatever, said that it was spelling SEX, and that the show was telling children to be promiscuous, sexually promiscuous. And I'm like, you look at that clump right there, and you see it for a split second. You really think kids are going to see that? Only you would see that because you're the one watching for anything that could be like poisoning the minds of the kids. Like, that's almost a non-issue. There was other controversy with the show, being that movie that it was an idea stolen from Japan called Kimba the Lion. But I don't know much about that other than, yeah, it sounds really similar. They were made around a similar time. But I don't think there's too much to go on that other than legally. But the Lion King I mean, that's why I think that the Lion King 1994 is Americanized version. Whereas the new one, with all these different actors, different singers, different ways of doing the songs and story, that's why I consider it more Africanized, in the sense that it is different than the mainstream American ideas that were back 25 years ago. It's changed a lot. Not so much that the story itself has changed, but that the way the story is told is a little different. And so those are my thoughts on the Lion King, the animated version and the live action version. I hope this was a good talk with you guys. I know I rambled a lot and I moved around a lot, but that's just what I do. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I can see you guys next time for another video. So like, share, and subscribe, guys. Catch you later.